think we can kick off. I don't believe that Nikki needs much of an introduction, and I think most of you know her. She is the chief executive of Conference Partners International, which is our latest INCON partner. So I'm delighted that she's here today, and she's going to share her expertise on client management. She's been in the industry for many years, and I'm sure she has lots of really good tips for you all. So I'll hand over to Nikki, and do put on your camera, as many of you as possible, because I just think even for Nikki, it makes it much more fun and engaging. And we will close the session at the end with Q&A. Over to you, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Angela. And I'm delighted to be here presenting the session. It's something I feel very passionate about, and it's not just client management. I suppose it's how we work with people. And normally, if I do this session, I would be in person, and there would be lots of interaction and communication. So I would actually really love if people did put on their cameras and also your sound, because I love when people interrupt and ask questions, and it's not even interrupting. It's so important just to get the most out of this, I suppose, as possible. So let me share. Can you all see that?
Yeah,
we're good. Okay, so I'm really excited about this presentation today, because I'm looking forward to just exploring with you all how we connect with people, be they clients, our team members, or even suppliers. And we all read books on client management and people management, and we learn a lot. For those, and they're fantastic. But what I'm going to really try to do today is to draw on my own 30 years of experience in this industry. And even when I look at like the word management, I kind of squirm a little bit, because I believe it's all about how we connect with people. And I don't know what stage everyone is at on their career, but this takes years to learn, and I'd equate it to going to the gym and building muscle. It's something that I don't think we personally work on enough, on who we are, our personality types, and how we adapt to others. So I think for those of you who are well on that journey, I always think you've something to learn, and those where you're starting off, it's a really great thing to do, and not just in your professional life, but also in your personal life. All of this helps in every aspect of life, and I do think it's a lifelong lesson. But it doesn't happen by chance, unfortunately. It takes a lot of thought. But I promise you here today, when you put thought into people, magic happens. It really does. And when you're curious and you ask questions, and you're caring, it really does build up very positive relationships. And I've put the E here. It's not just human connection, it's being humane and very thoughtful about people. And during the pandemic, we lost that physical connection, and we had to connect in a very different way through technology, like we are doing today, which has its huge benefits, but you do lose a little bit of that human connection. And even a lot of our client meetings, our team meetings, they're all facilitated through technology, and even now, post the pandemic, well into it, many of us are working in a kind of a hybrid working environment. But I want to start with this, and I think power of laughter is really important in any relationship, be it your teams or your clients. And it kind of creates that level playing field and builds a better relationship. But it still is very important to get that balance right between creating a professional relationship and that friendly relationship that builds trust and likability, and makes the experience a lot more enjoyable for you. So I'm just going to go through, by the way, Angela, I should have said earlier on, this session actually is in 2 parts, but it takes so long to go through all of this. I'm only going to do the first part, and I don't know if there's a time in the future, if people are interested, we could go through the second part. But the first part is very much about understanding the importance of emotional intelligence, and that is building those relationships and connecting with people. The second part is more on delivery and on your intellectual intelligence, on the process and the procedures and following the rules and doing your job, the technical part of doing your job. But today I'm just going to focus on the first part because I really don't want to rush it. So, I mean, the first question I'm going to ask you, or ask you to ask yourselves about this, is what's in it for me? And, you know, we're all self-focused, not selfish, but we always have to think about ourselves and why are we doing this and what's the benefit of it? And I think we all know when you've hit that sweet spot with a good relationship. So, you know, my promise to you today is, if we focus on this session today, and I would ask you to, even tomorrow or next Monday, whenever you start on this, is to take 30 minutes every day and think about this. I promise you it will just really enhance the enjoyment of your job, and it becomes so much more enjoyable if you do have those positive relationships with your team, with your boss, with whoever, with your clients, your suppliers. And you know, I actually read an article there last week. We've actually jumped from being the 4th most stressful industry in the world to the 3rd now. And I think it's very important for all of us in our mental health to really try and minimize that stress, and that is by having positive relationships. And when it does work, you know that feeling where you feel empowered and your client respects you and you respect your client, and it's a lovely flow. And you know, when you're accountable and responsible for all of that, it really is very empowering for you in doing your jobs. And not to mention your own personal growth, your professional growth. And honestly, when I have an account director in my team, or anyone in my team, who is really good at doing their jobs, but is equally good at managing clients and managing team members, or just in general working within a team, I will literally put that person through a very fast journey within their career. And let's be selfish, what does that mean? Career progression plus more money. And it's also very important for your own personal brand and your personal reputation. And we all know what that feels like. You know, when you're at the end of a conference and you're brought up on stage, you're given flowers, you're celebrated. That's very nice. And I think that's worthwhile. And then being selfish now as a leader myself, and thinking of the company, when this works, you win repeat business, valuable references and referrals for other business. It strengthens that brand promise. And anyone who's in sales in this call, we know what we promise, and it is a promise. And good relationships, good client management, good people management skills are really important for that. And it's not just doing the job, it's actually making it very enjoyable for all those involved as well. And of course, it leads to reputational excellence. And again, being very selfish, when I have somebody who's really good at this, it takes a huge amount of pressure from me. So I do think it's important to ask yourselves the why. Why are we doing this, and why is it important? Sometimes we jump into doing the job rather than thinking about this element of it. Now, I'm going to ask you to just do a little exercise more for yourself here. And I want you to think of a really good relationship that you have. It could be a grandmother, it could be a friend, it could be a client, it could be a colleague, whoever. And I'd love you to put one word into the chat that signifies why that is good. What is it? What is that one characteristic, that one element that makes that relationship good? And maybe Angela, you'll help me here now and call out some of those words for me. We give people a few minutes though.
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot of trust, relaxing, honesty, reliability, freedom, open and honest conversations, empathy, reliability again, acceptance, support. We have a lot of trust, inspiration, yeah, and trust again.
Are we still going? I think we're good. That's really interesting because, you know, I did this session with my own team, and trust was the one word that came out, but other words came out as well. And, you know, but you know, sometimes we think the relationship that we have with the client is different to any relationship we have personally. And the point I'm trying to make here, it's not, it's the same thing. But sometimes we put a barrier up because we go, oh, it's the client. It's not, it's another person. And I think if you can just even take that home today, that the relation, no matter how difficult that client is, hopefully by the end of today, you know, I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to improve those relationships. But trust is the one word. Even a client giving you the business, they want to trust you. You want to trust them. It is the one word that probably sums up, I think, a good client relationship. So let me just start with the first point here, and that is the human connection. And, you know, we've been working, I suppose, in a hybrid environment, and, you know, we're relying on so many teams of people to bring people together. So that's the challenge that we have. And let's just reflect on this, even during the pandemic and even last year when we were all inundated with business, you know, we were trying to give people certainty in uncertain times. And that's sometimes a very challenging situation to be in, because we weren't certain, but we felt we had to give that certainty to our clients. So that's very challenging for all of us. And if you think about now, the clients that we have, they're very different. You could have a very experienced international association, European association, where there's a strong CEO, a good executive, a good board. They're very different. They lead, and they want you to lead with them, but not necessarily take charge. Whereas you could also have a local ambassador who's put their hand up and saying, I'm bidding for my international conference, and they 100% rely on the PCO. They've never done it before. They're terrified. So the skills that we need are really important in terms of making it a very enjoyable project, but also for ourselves. And then if you look at, then you have the delegates. Thousands of delegates sometimes. You've got the committees, depending on the governance structure, there could be 5 committees. You have your sponsors, you have your exhibitors, you have your own internal team, the various different departments that bring it all together. And then you have all your suppliers. Now, I've used this picture on purpose because anyone who does our job is a freaking superhero. Honestly, it is one of the toughest jobs in terms of dealing with people. And that's why the personality types that we have are very important, even in employing people. So I want you all just to congratulate yourselves there and just realize what a superhero that you are. But, you know, to keep the cape on is challenging sometimes. And, you know, being Yoda, what do you think when you think of Yoda? You do think of the trusted advisor. So, you know, sometimes we train too much in like the delivery of the budget, the marketing, the logistics, and we need to pay equal importance to our leadership skills, becoming that trusted advisor, you know, building those relationships, how we communicate with clients, and being the trusted advisor, but also understanding the concerns of your clients. You know, if you just give you an example, for example, say you're having your first child or you're buying your first house, and you sit in front of that doctor or that consultant who's a financial consultant, and you're terrified of doing this. So, you know, what you need is somebody who is a very good technician in what they do, but also somebody who will answer your concerns, who will understand the pressures that you're under. So it takes a lot of questioning for them to understand you. And that's what we all need to become, is that trusted advisor. And humility it's a tough one for all of us. And I do love this quote. It's humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So what does that mean? It's the recognition of your own capabilities, but also the needs of others. You know, you understand that you are a small part of the big picture. Sometimes we are, but you're also a very, very valuable part of that picture. So it's being very positive. It's being energetic. It's not being negative. And we've all had horrible clients. And when you get off that call and you go, oh my God, they're the most awful clients. No, sometimes we have to stop doing that and not have that blame culture and be more solution driven and say, why is the client like that? Let's stop and think about that and ask the right questions. So let's just explore a little bit about what does the client want. And I think, again, as I say, sometimes we jump, when you get a new client, we jump straight in and we do the budget and we do the timeline and we do la. But do we stop and actually consider what type of person is that? What do they want? You know, let's start asking more questions of our clients. You know, even sometimes we, particularly the clients who are doing it for the first time, they don't know what is expected. They don't know what we do sometimes. So let's talk to them about what we do, where we take pressure from them, how they like to work. If it's a consultant doctor, is it a sick, we all hate them, but you know, it could be after their surgery at 6 p.m. So they're looking for us to understand their industry, yes, the conference, the company itself, but them, we need to start asking them how do they like to work. They're looking, trust again, that word is there, for us to do the right thing. And that's the technical part of our job. That is doing and delivering. But most importantly, and I think this is something that sometimes we forget enough of, they want someone who really cares and who will ask the question, why is this important to you? Why are you doing it? What are their core objectives? You know, what do you hope to achieve from that? And then aligning our plan in relation to that. So are there any, before I move on to the second section there, are there any questions that anyone has on that building of the human connection and, you know, understanding the client, asking the right questions, building up the positive relationship? No?
Yeah, maybe just a quick question, Nicola. How do you learn the whole team that positive attitude in a very fast-paced environment as we are in now post-COVID? Because to me, the lead times are getting shorter and shorter. The pressure is getting higher. So it's a great approach. It's a great intention to work towards. But in a high-paced environment, it's also a challenging part to get people to relax and take time for these to change.
Yeah. And you know, Niels, it's a very good question, and it is so much more challenging now. I don't know that what's going on, but the pace is so fast. The whole supply chain is not quite right there yet, so that's taking longer time.
Yeah.
Even though the clients want it quicker, and we're not getting it quick enough, and we're getting it in a slow way. So I've done 3 sessions with my team on this, and one, it's getting them to. Stage 1 is today. It's literally trying to understand this and being aware. 2 is, we've done a bit of work on this as well. It's when you have a tough client meeting or you have a difficult situation, it's really important to share. It's really important for all account managers or account directors, everyone has different titles, to come together and support each other and share how do they get what they need. How do they build strong relationships and sharing that? And sometimes it's nearly like therapy, to be honest. Like our jobs are so difficult practically, but when you look at this side, you'd need to be a psychologist. So it's, for me, it's really trying to encourage an ecosystem of support where there's no blame culture. Stuff goes wrong, but asking for support. And also post meetings. Sometimes meetings don't go well and there's issues, and it's so important to actually do an evaluation after the meeting. Go, okay, that did not go so well. We're here to support you. Don't worry about it. What do we need to do? How do we get things done based on that? You know, and it's sometimes it's not holding it in yourself, because you have to share that. And I don't know with you, Niels, but my team are not in the office every day.
No,
we still have a hybrid environment. So sometimes you've had that meeting and then you click that end button and you just go, oh, good God. You know, so it's get on to the team again and start talking about it. And I think that's really important for our mental health.
It is. Thanks.
Yeah, I can see my team, Adele, there smiling. She knows what I'm talking about, right, Adele? Okay, will I move on? Does anyone else like to come in there? No? Okay. Okay, I will share again. I'm probably sharing in the wrong area. Okay. So this bit is, I think, is really important. And it's building self-confidence. And if you think some of our clients, they're all thought leaders. Like anyone who organizes an international conference or sits on a board, they are the best of the best. They're professors, they're doctors, they're CEOs, they're executive directors. And, you know, sometimes some of our team members are quite young or learning, particularly post-COVID, because we've had to re-employ and rebuild teams and retrain. And it's so easy to become intimidated. And I actually love this picture because you can see this young girl and everyone's slapping her. But, you know, do you know that vulnerability of, you know, if you're young and I remember one of my first meetings in my first year of work, I actually just was terrified all the time. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and provide support for our team members around that. And also realize if you are on this call here today and you are at the early stage of your career, it's okay to feel like this. And it's very important to ask for help. But it's also really important to see your skill and be proud of your skill. We are a profession as well. You know, a professor can't do what we do. We can't do what they do. So we need each other. So I think you know, we need to talk to our teams about that and build up that confidence. And I'm just going to play a little video here. I love this video because it's a person at the top of a slope, young child who's terrified. But wait till you see the reaction at the end.
I'll be fine.
You want to hear that?
Do it. Well,
Yeah.
here goes something, I guess. Oh, okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Just keep it straight and you'll be fine. Do the
Okay.
same thing you do on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have
It's a
fun.
bigger 20. Go ahead. You got this. I got it.
It's fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Here
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go. Yeah! Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa! I'll be fine.
Have fun.
Oops, sorry, I'm gonna play it again. Anyway, so I love that video piece because, you know, we've all been in those situations where we've had team members where they're just terrified, and the procrastination and the waiting, and then the simple joy and pride when you do something. And, you know, I had one of my account managers recently who did their very first event, very first conference, big conference. And that fear was in him. And we all gathered together and we gave him support. We put a lot of senior people around him on the day, but who were just there for him. And if you listen to that calm voice of the two adults in the background, I think that's really important in supporting our teams and managing their clients, and, you know, building on that confidence, really putting a warm fluffy blanket around our team. I think our people our own people are very important right now. Just as Neil pointed out there, we're being put under huge pressure from clients, and clients are under huge pressure as well. A lot of associations lost a lot of money in the 2 years of the pandemic, so there's a pressure on everybody, and to break down those barriers and build those relationships, it's even more important now. But I think in terms of being confident, you can't be confident unless you are prepared and you're being proactive. Sometimes we just do the bare minimum and that never works. So I think it's the old Scouts. What's the Scouts saying? It's if you fail to prepare, if you fail, whatever it is, fail to something if you don't prepare. So it's really important to be ahead of the client, lead your teams, and be very prepared. It takes time and it's hard work. I always say work is work. It's not meant to be, work is work. Let's be honest. It's not meant to be always be enjoyable. It is work. It's what we have to do. But more importantly than anything, if the relationship is built with the client, it is a lot more important. It's a lot easier to be self-confident. So again, I want to stop now. I'm going to stop sharing now for a minute. And I would love people to just share a little bit here today. And I'm just going to ask the one question here. What is the biggest fear that anyone has when you're going into a client meeting? And it could even be a situation where you're rushed and that you weren't prepared for the meeting or whatever, or the client is difficult, just anything at all, because I just want to break this down a little bit. I'd love some brave person.
Fine, I'll be first.
Thank you, Una.
I think to be caught off guard, like to be asked a question that you're not prepared, and you might come out stupid, and they can find mistakes in you, like, continue the conversation, and it can become kind of an interrogation, and then you find yourself with no answers. I think that's the most terrifying situation to be in front of a client.
Yeah, I get that. And, sometimes that can be a situation where you haven't had time to prepare, and you always go in terrified and lacking in confidence when that happens. But my advice is to never, excuse the language here, never bullshit. It's to say, you know what, that is a really great question. And I'm surrounded by many experts on my team. I don't have the answer for you right now on that, but I'm going to come back to you on it and ask one of my colleagues. And you see the way that's delivered with confidence, and you're not going I don't know. And if it is like, human behavior is unbelievable. When you show weakness or you're bluffing, your authenticity goes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put a smile in your face and go, you know what, I really don't have the answer to that, but I will get it. And I'm surrounded by fantastic people who are going to have that to you by tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. They will never even ask you again. So, a lot of it is that self-confidence, isn't it? I can see Una smiling there. Una, do you want to come in?
Yes. Actually, I do a lot of prepare and before the meeting, but sometimes I still feel anxious and even lost the voice when I'm standing the point, like 20 people are, look at you, and you get a sweating, and sometimes the voice is cannot counter. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm going to relate this to anxiety. I'm not saying you have anxiety, Una, but we have 3 parts to our brain. An animal only has 2 parts to their brain. We have this frontal part. And when the back part, the primitive part of our brain, becomes scared, this logical brain does not work. So, when you might forget a word, or you might forget what you're trying to say, that is because this part is it's the flighter, right? It's that part of your brain that just stops this part working. So it's really, really important to relax and, be prepared, but also building your self-confidence and knowing you are great at your job and you have this. And if you are absolutely terrified, it's to ask for help and ask for somebody to support you in attending that meeting. I'm so sorry, Angela, I missed Lior's presentation on present. I would love to hear that, because I had a huge fear of presenting. I mean, like, it was a phobia nearly. I literally wouldn't be able to breathe. And one of my mentors, Gonzalo, Jurian will know him, he's since passed away. He made me go to Macau in China and do a 3-day seminar, give a 3-day seminar. And I went, no, I'm not doing it. I can't do that. You don't understand. I can't do it. It goes back to when I was 14 and I fell off a stage and I was terrified and I'm not doing it. And he goes, you are doing it. You're doing it. And I did it. But honestly, the first day, it was the most, I can still feel it. It was the most awful experience of my entire life. But I made sure I literally prepared like heck. I literally just went through the pain to get over that fear. And we all have that fear. Every single person on this call at some stage in their life weekly maybe, is fearful of doing things. And, you know, I stop. I mean, even coming here today, okay, I was got a speeding fine, and the fear of being late for it, then doing it, and you know, it's very important to be vulnerable and honest, and just get on with it. But it's very normal. That happens to everybody. And I mean, I would often, and I didn't do it today, but I would be very calm before I go on stage. I mean, I still do those 3-day seminars, and I do more now. And I really have to calm myself, and I have to ground myself. And I'm dying to hear the presentation from Lior, because it's something I'm very interested in. But let me share again. So thank you very much for sharing, by the way, guys, because that really helps, because great conversation comes out when people do share. So now I'm going to move on to the third area. How am I doing for time? This is I love self-awareness, and I don't know how many of you have done personality and learning about your own personality or psychometric testing. Maybe put into the chat there, say yes or no, and Angela might help me out there, just seeing how many we have. So I started this only about 15 years ago, and when I did, I realized how unaware I was of my own personality type. And it's really very interesting. And I just want to say, before I say anything else on this, there is no right or wrong here. You are who you are. And we all know naturally when you're in front of a very lively social person or a very quite shy person, but it goes so much more than that. And disc profiling is fantastic. And if you've not done it, I would encourage you to do it. And even if you have done it, I'd encourage you to do it again, because we all adapt. You have your natural personality, but you also adapt depending on your environment. And we have to adapt a lot in our job. So here we have a lovely little poll. So will I close that down, Angela, or do I need to do something with it? I'm going to click yes, I've done it.
Yeah, you can, just leave it on for another couple of seconds.
So there's so many different types, but I love disc profiling, and there's 4 different characters. And you're a mix of all. You're never just one of one, but you might be high in one part of it. So you've got the dominant on the left here. You've got those questioning and kind of skeptical people, but they're very fast paced and they're outspoken. That's on the left hand side, and then on the right side you've got the more accepting and warm people. Some of them are cautious. Some of them are more outspoken. I don't mind sharing mine with you, and it changes every year depending on my environment. But my natural personality is, well, I'll tell you what my work personality is. Maybe it's probably more relevant. I'm kind of a mid-level D, and I'm a very high I. I have a little bit of C and a little bit of S. So and it's not dominant in your personality. It's more you're task driven. You're time. I mean, we work in this industry, so my natural is nowhere near as high as my professional, because my professional life requires me to be looking at goals all the time, looking at targets. We're in a very time-driven world, so it's all about time management. I'm naturally a very high I. I think I'm something like 98% I, which is I am a communicator. I love talking to people. I love people. I naturally am quite conscientious, but in my work life, I'm not, because I don't have time to be. That's really interesting. And that's gone way down in the last 2 years because of that, because of my environment. And then steady, I'm very low steady. I really don't like doing the same job every day. Whereas you could have a lot of people who are, for example, I'm just going to say in delegate services, they love doing the same thing every day. They're process driven people. They're normally C's and S's, whereas salespeople tend to be the I's. Accountants tend to be very high D's and C's. So you get the measure. So if we look at just in terms of the percentage of people in the world, only 3% are high D's, which is quite low, isn't it? And that's probably a good thing, because we probably might have too many Hitlers in the world if we had too many more than 3%. And then you have the I's, only 11%. The S's are the biggest group of people. So if you have a lot of S's in your company, that's quite normal. And then the cautious people, or I suppose not so much cautious, but they're conscientious people. And if I had to, just to make this easier, I'm going to give you a scenario just to explain these personality types. Imagine you're standing at a lift, you're all waiting for a lift. The high D will press the button and then he'll step back. Then he'll go for he or she. Then he'll go forward and he'll probably press it 3 more times because the lift's not coming quick enough. And then he's first in the lift and he positions himself at the front of the lift so he can get out the first. The high I is the person who gets in the lift and says hello to everyone. What floor are you going to? Starts chatting to the people. The S is the person who holds the door open. Come on in, lets everyone in before them. Very warm, accepting people. And then the C is the person who's standing in the lift and who's looking at the load bearing. Oh my God, there's too many people in this lift. Somebody has to get out. So that's just a little analogy to help you understand those different personalities. But, you know, step 1 of this is actually understanding different personalities. And step 2 then is understanding your personality in relation to that. So maybe if you've done this before, you'll know where you sit, but if you've not done it, you might even guess where you sit, but you can go online, you can do this for free. You can actually pay something like $50 and you can get a full list of all your personality traits, even what industry you should be in, what job you should be in. It's really, really interesting. So this part, I'm going to tell you a little story about me before I was self-aware. Going back 15 years ago, I was working with my accountant, Susan. She's no longer with me, so I can say her name. And she reacted, she was always terrified of me. And she always looked nervous. And I had just done the psychometric testing and I brought it up with my trainer and I said, look, I have this situation in work and, you know, this fabulous girl, she's so lovely and she's so good at her job, but she's really nervous of me. And every time I ask her to do something, you know, she asks me so many questions. I find it so frustrating. So she smiled at me and she goes, that's not her problem, it's your problem. You're not understanding her personality. If she's your accountant, more than likely she is a high C, a high S, and probably got half, maybe 50% D, and very little I. That's my guess. So she goes, the next time you give her a task, tell her where you want to go, what's the end result of what you want, but then go right back to the beginning and say, here's what I'd like, but here are the 10 steps that I think we need to take to get to Z, from A to Z. So I try this with her and we have a lovely conversation. I don't see a terrified Susan in front of me. She's smiling. We're going through all of the 10 steps. She's contributing much better than me. And at the end of the conversation, I say to her, Susan, when do you think you could get that for me? And she goes, I'll have that to you by the end of the day. So that was I tell you that because it's good to be self-deprecating sometimes. And I learned a huge amount from that exercise because what I realized is that quite simply, it sounds so obvious, we're all so different. And to really get the most out of people, be it a client, a team member, a supplier, you have to try and understand their personality and where they're coming from. So Susan and myself got on brilliantly from that day forward because I understood her personality, but more importantly, I understood my personality. And we all have great traits to our personalities, but we all have things that we need to work on. And mine still is slowing down and going through the process because I have this very fast brain that goes from A to Z. And I am not a detailed oriented person. I know I'd say to my team, please never invite me to the contract meeting. It actually pains my brain to even think about going through a contract line by line. I say, come to me when you have it all done. And if you have questions and there's queries, and then we'll come to a solution. So it's really understanding your personality and the people that you work with. And then step 3 is really interesting because that's when you start identifying other people's styles of personality. So even if you're in sales or you're pitching, I can go into a room now and I always say to my team, never go straight into a presentation. Ask questions first. Start showing them who you are. Not annoying questions, but, you know, ask relevant questions. Ask questions that you think will be of interest to them so that you get some information from them. And then within about 5-10 minutes, I can actually see all the different personality types around the table. So when I'm pitching what I do in our service, I can relate to different people around the table because I've asked the right questions. So, and that applies to your own team meetings as well. You know, if you are an account director or a project manager, you know, needless to say, you probably have to work with delegate service, you have to work with program and abstract management, you have to work with marketing, finance, sponsorship and commercial, all of that. So all of those people, and you're the lead, you're managing the client and you're leading all of these people to get a really great result for your company, for yourself and for the client. And understanding all those personality traits and or understanding what pressure they might be under is really important in terms of getting everyone working the way you want them to work. But it's very interesting when you start doing this and you actually start seeing natural personality traits. But to do that, you have to zip it, you have to listen a lot, and you have to ask questions. It's not about talking, it's really looking around you and becoming more aware. And then the fourth step, like I had to do with Susan, is modifying your style to work with different people. And if any of you are parents, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I can see Neil's putting his hand up there. That's so true. So, you know, I am a different mother to my 3 different children, completely, because I modify who I am based on what their needs are. And sometimes I say, if we could just bring our personal attributes into our professional work environment, we would learn a lot. And I always, I think being a mother or being a father is the best learning in building relationships. And if we could bring our skills that we've learned from raising children to our work life, it could really help us all. I mean, if you think of a toddler who's crawling and learning to walk, when they fall down, what do? You pick them up, you encourage them, go again. And you're there for them. If you fall, I'll pick you up again. You're building trust. They completely trust you. And I would love us all to think about how do we bring that into work. If somebody falls down at work, sometimes we go, oh God, they made a mess, they screwed up. No, come on, we've got this. We'll do it right the next time. So, you know, there's a lot of the natural skills that we have that we forget when we come into the professional environment. But hey, you know what? The bad news is there are so many different types of people out there, but the good news is that they're predictably different. So with learning and teaching ourselves all of this and being self-aware, adapting and self-aware of other people, aware of other people's personality types, you can learn this quite easily. And it makes your job so much easier when it comes to people management and client management. Fourth and final area here is being the leader. Now, go back to Yodo. Do you remember that picture of Yodo? Think of that. It's being the trusted advisor. And I'm just going to go through some traits here. If you could think about this is what we all need to be a good leader. And I'm going to put my hand up. I am not great at all of these. I am working on them. It's a lifelong journey of how to be a good leader. But I think the first one there is really important. It's listening and focusing on people's needs. And listening, we underestimate how hard it is to listen. You know, I bet you everybody's been in this situation. You're in a group chat or a group meeting or a board meeting, and you are listening to somebody, but an idea comes into your head that you want to share. So straight away you stop listening. Now you're only hearing, which is a natural ability, but to truly listen takes all your brain power. And it's listening. It's listening to understand, not listening to reply. And it's I mean, I did this with my own team, and unfortunately we won't have time to do it today, but we put everyone in groups of 2, and they could spend 5 minutes only asking questions. They were not allowed to give an answer. They were not allowed to recommend anything. So one person told them what their problem was, and they could only ask questions and come to the solution by asking questions. And that's listening. And they all said it was really hard, but they also said they got a much deeper understanding of the problem. And that is like, so those leaders who truly listen, they understand, they're consistent, they will help you look at a different perspective. And that's the questioning. So if there is an issue or a problem, it's not to give the solution. It's actually just to try and get the person to come up with a different perspective and look at it a different way. They remain very calm. They're not emotional and non-judgmental. They never criticize, but you can rely on them to tell the truth. And probably one of the hardest things to do as a leader. And actually, I bet, okay, can you do another poll, Angela? Sorry, I'm going on the hop here now. Can you ask the question, do you think you're a leader? Oh, so 70% of people have done this profiling. That's great. So we'll ask that question.
Nicola, what is the definition of a leader by your experience?
This, it is the trusted advisor. It's all of these qualities.
Right.
And honestly, Niels, it's, you know, you're a managing director, what, 3-4 years now? 5 years? Yeah. So, I mean,
2
years, 2 years.
Only, yeah.
So like, I bet you it's so hard, you know, taking over from someone else and leading a new team through it, the pandemic. I mean, that's really hard. So for me, it is all of these qualities.
Right.
And, you know, it's just really listening to people. And as I say, I don't profess to be a great leader, but I am a leader. And I'm a leader in many areas. And I mean, I'm going to say to you, if you are a mother, you're a leader. If you're a sister, you're a leader. If you're a friend, you're a leader. Because all of these qualities are needed for leadership. And we're all leaders. And sometimes people think, oh, only the boss is the leader. No, whatever you're accountable for, you are a leader of that. And I think accountability and responsibility is key to good client management. So Niels, to answer probably the one big thing is to empower people. Give them the skills, teach them, give them the confidence, all of the stuff that we're talking about today. Repeat this session with your team. You know, it takes a lot of time. And, you know, we started a training program this year, and at a time where we probably don't have time. And I thank my team for turning up, because I know how busy they are, and they think that is the last thing I need now. But it's so important to train our people to be leaders. But and you know, it's, what have we got? That's great. We've got a very confident group here. I'm going to say to the 11%, I bet you're leaders. I bet you're leaders. I mean, you're leading, whatever your job is, you're leading in that. You are a leader if you are helping out a friend, a sister. It is, you know, it's, oh my goodness, sometimes it upsets me when I see people who don't believe in themselves and don't believe they're doing a great job. And I'm going to ask all of you, even who said no, to rethink that and rethink about that tonight over a cup of tea, and write down where you are a leader and where you are a good leader, and then bringing those skills maybe into your job, because everyone's a leader in their personal life. So and Niels, to answer your question as well, like, probably one of the hardest part about leadership is actually having the difficult conversations. It's really hard. I find that hard too, because I am a high I, so high I's don't like to be unpopular. And having the difficult conversations. But I'm going to say, if there's an issue, and this is with the client or a supplier, a team member, if there's an issue, the most important thing is to generate a conversation around it and ask questions around it, rather than go, you didn't do that, you screwed up. So I think it's that skill is really important. It's to ask the question, well, why, where was the challenge there? Can you help me figure out why that wasn't done? So that we make sure it doesn't happen again. Now, what support do you need to make sure that we do that? You know, so it's, or if it's a client and they're asking, they're being impossible and asking for something that's not possible, it's again creating the conversation, questioning around, getting them to your side of the fence, and getting them to understand why you want it done like this. So, you know, you're seeing all of these qualities up here, but it is being that human. It's being humane. It's understanding their perspective. It's understanding your own perspective and trying to meet a middle ground. But that again, it's back to the trust. You know, if you know, it's do you know that, like, it's the feeling when you all closed your eyes there, and I asked you the question, what is that one word? So many of you wrote trust, and to get to trust takes all of these qualities here. And it's being very people-centric, not being the CEO And there's also that barrier is very important to break down. And I have a lot of new team members in the last year and a half. And, you know, culture is different in every company, but we have a hierarchy, but we have a very flat structure in terms of how we work together. So, you know, openness is encouraged. You know, friendliness is encouraged. I tell my team, please WhatsApp me anytime. Do not email me, but WhatsApp me if you want to have a conversation. And, you know, I think it's creating that openness and no blame culture, trust, training, all of that helps build a really strong team. And the last point is really important. And it's not just because I'm Irish, but a sense of humor is so important, and laughter. And sometimes, excuse my language, I just say, if there's an issue, I go, fuck it, let's just fix it. You know, and sorry, not to be, I don't want to be rude there, but sometimes we have to say that as leaders. It's okay, it's happened. There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, we were all under huge pressure last year. We had too much business. We weren't resourced enough. Every PCO in the world said that in Jerusalem, when we were all there together. And, you know, sometimes we just have to diffuse that situation and allow people to know it's okay, but let's move forward in a better way. So all those traits, what's really interesting, when we talked about IQ and EQ earlier on, all of those traits are related to emotional intelligence. So doing the job is one thing, and we all think being a pre-planner, delivering the conference on site, all of that is really, really important. But the other part is 50%, if not more. In fact, I probably would say more. So, and the difference here is being the professional and being the technician. And I'm going to say a real professional is a technician who cares. Go back to the doctor. Go back to the person who's helping you buy your first house. They know the technical side of it, but that's, you know, if you're sitting in front of a technical doctor who doesn't smile and doesn't listen to you and doesn't understand your concerns, it's both of these combined. So the opposite of profession is technician, and professionalism is that attitude, that demeanor, and it's not a set of competencies. It's a very valuable part of what you do. So finally, how do we, and I'll go through this quickly. We have got 5 minutes, and maybe I won't go through it. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I will go through, but if there are questions, because I would rather take questions than go through the next bit. There's got to be a question in there. Okay, I'll go through quickly, and then I want a question. Oh, one final question. Okay, so how do you accelerate it? Because, you know, we're all under pressure, and it's something that we really need to work on and work on fast. So very quickly, I've talked a lot about this. The positive relationships are key. That is the whole humane connection I just talked about. Good judgment and expertise is doing your job. And that's just the basics. They expect what they expect, and they want it delivered on time. But this third part is really important, and that is consistency, walking the talk. And then humility. So that, again, just to repeat, it's that recognition of your ability and your capabilities, but watching out for the needs of others. So I'll just go through these in a little bit more detail. So again, and Niels, this might help more in terms of being a good leader. It's knowing what the issues are, but also keeping the concerns of your team members in relation to those issues. So it's not just fixing it at the expense of everyone. It's going, yeah, let me fix it, but what's the impact of that going to have on my people? And sometimes that's dropping a client. I dropped 5 clients last year because of this. You know, sometimes it's important to look at the concerns of others rather than just take the money on the client. And it is balancing the results. Sometimes, as Una said, there, our clients are putting us under huge pressure. You know, we have to balance that up with the concern for our team members, our suppliers. And it is essentially creating this lovely flow of information and relationships between our clients, our suppliers, our team members. And if there is any conflict, it's resolving it quickly, and giving very honest feedback, but in a helpful way. So feedback's important. It's hard to give it sometimes if it's negative, but it has to be done in a very constructive and helpful way. The second bit then is the client loves your good judgment and your expertise. That is the main reason that we're in business and they go to us. So that is it. That's normal. However, it is sometimes, I'm not going to say all the time, but sometimes a project manager, account manager will jump straight into the doing. They'll do the budget, they'll book the venue, they'll do the marketing plan. They won't actually talk to the client about, here's what we do. Let me go through all the various different services with the entire committee, by the way, not just one person. Here's what we do. Here's what you do. We're going to do 90%. You're going to do 10%. You're in charge of content, program submissions, all of that, abstract submissions. But we do everything else for you. And here's how we're going to report. And so it's not just jumping into the doing. It's actually showing them what our expertise is. And sometimes we don't communicate it. Like again, going back to that disc profiling, C's and S's, they're not, if they've a low I, they don't boast about what they do. And you know what? It's actually very important. It's not for boastful reasons, but it's very important to communicate what you do so that everybody knows that that's been done and I don't have to worry about that. And sometimes we forget to do that. So it's really showing off your knowledge and communicating it. Does that make sense? And I think
Can I have one question, Nicola?
Yeah, sure, Niels.
About good judgment and expertise. What I find is that if you give advice, they always tend to want that advice for free. So you bring a lot of knowledge to the table, you share a lot, you give away a lot, but in the end, if you say upfront, if you want to pay for it, like a consultant, they won't. Is it something you see as well? How would you approach that?
Can you give me an example of that advice?
So like a conference goes to a certain rotation cycle in Europe and they ask your experience without knowing the environment very well. So it's a first client and they want to give a full report on what you do, how you would approach and everything. So you give away a lot of your knowledge without them paying for it, like a consultant fee.
Okay. I think that's boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's boundaries. And I think boundaries are really important. And I think overall, if I may say something about our profession, I think we lack confidence. I think we're always wanting to be seen as, oh, we're great, come to the PCO, we'll do it for you. Rather than taking a very strong, firm position and going, this is our profession. This is what we do. Contracting is really important in this, even though I hate contracts. One thing I do like about contracts is what is out of scope. Let me write that bit. I'll write that bit. And I think that's another trait in our industry is that, you know, clients expect us to, particularly those one-off clients, don't sign the contract and then expect us, we've done 6 months work and they still haven't signed the contract. You know, so that is a lack of respect. That respect has to be on both sides. But I think, just to answer your question, the contract is really important so that they know what's out of scope and saying, here's the charge, the daily rate, if the service is required. And we don't do that enough.
No, you're right.
I mean, if you went to a solicitor to review the contract and then you went back a second time, do you think they're not going to charge you? Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's up to us really. And it's also, our environment is very competitive, and you know, I think sometimes it's the race to the bottom in terms of pricing, and I'd love to see that in our industry kind of elevate a little bit more.
It should.
Yeah.
But it's also about confidence, what you said. If we are more confident in ourselves, in our trade, in our expertise, then we are dare to charge more.
Yeah. And it's also, you know, depends on your year. Like last year, I mean, I think many of us were turning away business.
Still am.
And it was a great feeling. You know, I mean, do you know what I mean? It's a good feeling, and that you're handpicking the business that's of value, whereas there's a you know, a good relationship with the client and good revenue value for your business. So that's what I mean by nice situation. Of course, we would rather have more people and deliver the business. So the third area then is really important. And you know that I'm going to go back to that child at the top of the ski lift. Do you know that procrastination of fear? Procrastination is a killer in our industry. You're so fearful of doing something, you don't go. And then the mom says, just go. The longer you wait, it's going to be worse. And I think that's it's because our industry is so difficult. Sometimes we wait too long, or you might get we're so busy, right? You might have 5 clients who are on to you in the one day, and you're going, oh my God, how do I prioritize this? And you don't do any of them because you're kind of going, oh. So, but being reliable and being responsive is the one thing that builds trust with the client. It's the one thing that builds trust between a CEO and their team. You know that feeling when you send an email and you go, I'm not sure that person's going to come back to me. I did that to Angela yesterday. She sent me an email wanting my dates for a meeting, and I haven't gone back to her, but I bet you I've told Angela at the very beginning when she was working with me, please WhatsApp me, because I get so many emails and I travel so much and I have so many meetings. If it's something urgent, WhatsApp me. So it's being the desire to be responsive and reliable is really important in our industry for those clients. But do you all know that feeling when you send an email and you go, I'm not so sure I'm going to get a reply here? You know, that lack of trust. So I think, walking the talk, honoring your commitments, setting expectations at the very beginning, and even talking about things that could go wrong, so that when stuff does come up, you go, well, look, I told you about that. This is going to be a tricky time. It could be early registration deadline day. By the way, I know we said we're going to apply in 24 hours. Around this time, that could be 48 hours. Do you know what I mean? So it's forewarning, and also being just trying to minimize the I suppose any lack of responsiveness. And again, the fourth area is really important, particularly with those core PCO clients, and really looking at your clients and seeing who wants to lead and who wants to be led. But that humility, even though you're a very important part of delivering that conference, knowing that there's so much more, because if you look at an association, you've got the executive, you've got a board, sometimes you've got councils, there's so many different governance structures that are attached to our clients. Sometimes it's important for us to realize, okay, I am very important in delivering this, but I am a small part of a big picture. And again, listening. What do they want? And also having that respect for your clients, respect for your team. And that's a very difficult thing to build up. And I will say, with all of this, client management, people management, it's like a relationship. It doesn't happen overnight. It has to be built. It's why we all love repeat clients, because we get to know them, we get to build up relationships with them, we build the trust over time. And sometimes the one-off clients are the tricky ones, because they're doing it for the first time. If it's a 2-year project, it's easier. If it's a 1-year project, it's hard, because it's time driven and they're nervous. We're all trying to work together, but this takes time and it takes investment. Now, finally, this last slide. This is the brain of an emotionally intelligent person, or just anyone who is using their brain in an emotional way. This is the IQ brain, structured. Look at this. It's so varied. We can go any which way. And that's the adaptability that we need to be good at building relationships, human connections, and getting those lovely client relationships working. So thank you all so much.